This is the next tutorial in the Paris Shop event, in which I'll cover assembling the chocolatier or chocolate shop. I won't be covering making all the treats you see displayed in the shop, as I covered them in a series of 3 videos that I posted previously. I also won't be covering any of the display cases that I covered in a previous video. If you missed those videos, you'll find them listed in the description area below. In this tutorial, I'll cover the architectural changes that I made to customize the room for the store, additional furnishings, lighting, bay windows, a wraparound sidewalk, signage, and new image sets. Because I'm using glass cases to display lots of the items, I decided that I needed to add some additional support to the ceilings. And so before I did anything else, I turned the whole structure upside down. And that meant that the floors were now ceilings, ceilings were now floors, and that made it easy for me to add some support to all of the ceilings. And what I'm using is something called basswood. It's very lightweight and super strong, and I ended up painting it. It's a 1/4 inch basswood and square, and I ended up painting it and then gluing it onto the ceilings, and as you can see with that flipped, it makes it so much easier to do that. I used E6000 and I made sure that the fit was very tight against the walls. And then what I also did, which you don't see here in the picture, is I put some weight on that ceiling, and that way it almost made the ceiling kind of bow the opposite direction, so that way when I remove that weight and I put other weight on top of the ceiling with all the glass cases and whatnot, it'll give me kind of an extra support. So I would recommend just putting a little bit of weight on that ceiling. And also it helped me to keep the basswood pressed against the ceiling while it dried. And I went ahead, I didn't really need it for the ceilings up at the top. I wasn't sure. I know in the center I will, because I will have a mechanism to pull the elevator up. But I just went ahead, since I had the whole thing turned over, I just went ahead and put supports in all of the ceilings. To dress up the back of the room, I ended up adding this pretty fretwork piece that you see. It comes with the back and then all of that cut out. So I put white, painted the piece in the back white, and then the pretty fretwork part I painted pink. And in the center you see a clock, and that comes from a new collage sheet called Chocolate Shop. And on that sheet you get the chocolate clock and some signage and posters that are all chocolate themed items, and then also some invoices that are also for a chocolate shop. Now, since the building is staggered, the center goes back further than each side. So I got to thinking about that, and I thought, you know what, it would be nice to have a little bit more floor space for the shop. And of course I could get more stuff in it, which is always a good thing for me. And so I decided to add an extension to the floor. And so I cut 2 pieces of chipboard that when I put them together, glued them together, they were the same thickness as the floor that's already there. And I cut it the width of the floor, and I also cut it 5 inches deep. I decided to add that much more. And then of course I covered it with the same paper as the rest of the floor. And then just to give it a little bit more support, I have glued it to the edge with E6000, is I put a very thin piece of chipboard underneath that goes from the extension all the way underneath the original floor of the house kit. So that way it just kind of gave it extra support besides just how it was glued along the floor. And then of course, like I said, it sticks out, so I was able to also glue the edge of the floor, the new extension, to the part that sticks out. And I actually then went ahead and added paper and the same papers I put on the walls, and also the same trim to that little extended piece. So now that I've extended the floor, I thought what I'll do is add some trellis work on the other side, and that will give me a cute little area to put a table and chairs on the other side of that. And so I decided to create this trellis, and I just took pieces of chipboard and made a square, and then cut thin pieces of chipboard and into strips, and then laid them across in a diagonal area. I laid a set one way and then the other way, and then of course trimmed off the edges. And then I glued that to another piece of chipboard, solid chipboard, that had a piece of decorative paper on it that had like a brick pattern. And then on the back side of it, I covered it with the same paper that I used for the walls on the inside of the shop. And then that piece I then ended up gluing to that extension. And I glued it to the floor of the extension, and then I also glued it to the edge of the shop wall. So that also gave me a little bit more support for the extension, and then gave me a cute little wall that would extend the shop and also give me more wall space in the shop, and then also give me more wall space on the outside of the building to have that little area that you see. Now, to give myself more surfaces, I created some shelving for the walls, and I liked using the glass because it lets the light through. And here you see that I've taken a microscope slide and some fold-over bale leaves and just made an L bracket out of them. And then you can see how I've attached those. That's to that little wall extension that the other side has the trellis on it. And so I staggered those, and that gave me a couple of shelves there for goodies. And then I also did another set. Now these are square glass slides. Now these, a long time ago, Ranger made a line of different sized glass slides, and they were called memory glass. And they don't make them anymore, but you can find them from time to time on eBay and Etsy. So if you're looking for something like that, that's where I would go. And that gave me larger, they're like 1.5 inch squares. They gave me a larger areas for some of the larger cakes and pastries and whatnot. And then I used a piece of filigree that I bent into an L bracket, and then used that to attach those larger slides to the wall. And then now you can see those 6 slides all attached with the larger pieces sitting on top of it. The last major thing that I have attached to the wall is an inside door. And I put the door together pretty much like I did when I put the door together for the front door in the video before this, the architectural video where I built the whole structure for the shops. And I didn't use the door frame that comes with the kit, so I had to use a paper version, and that's on the Architectural Details digital kit that I had used before in that previous video. And then I used another piece of stained glass that I printed onto transparency film. I did it the same way, and I backed it with some white paper so that the stained glass really pops. And I have that stained glass image for you on my blog, so you can download that and use it too if you would like. And I used that same fretwork door, and behind it is an image of the outside, and it's looking at a bookshop. And that can be found on a new digital kit that I have that goes along with the chocolate shop. And it includes all the things that you saw on the collage sheet, plus a whole bunch of other things like awnings, and then all kinds of bags and things that go with the shop, as well as a lot more posters and whatnot and signage than the collage sheet had. So I got that image from this digital kit, and it's a large image, so you could probably use that to put behind multiple doors for the other shops as well. And then, so the fretwork goes on top of that, and then I've got a little hardware, hinges, and then a little door handle, and that completed the inside door that now has a mirror image on the outside of the outside door, which I'll cover in just a little bit. Now, inside the store are all kinds of display cabinets, and most of those I covered in the previous tutorial, and you can see an image there of the 2 white cases and then the center case, and then I will get to the point where I'll show you how I used some of those others in the bay windows. So I'm not going to go through that, but something that is new here is bookcases in the back. And those bookcases are made from a chipboard kit, and it's really easy to assemble. I painted them white, and then I accented some of the bookcases with some pink striped paper, and then I edged everything with these gold stickers, these thin gold stickers. I use those. You've seen me use those before. They really make something, really dress something up and make it look nice. And then it's full of, the sweets that I covered in the sweet tutorial. And then at the bottom, you see boxes that have the Chocolatier on it and the logo and all that kind of stuff. Now, that is can be found on my new collage sheet, chocolate bags and boxes. And this gives you a series of different size bags, different size boxes, and also some general labels that you could use to put on some other box that you might have. And they all have tabs that you could just score and then glue them together. And if you noticed in the digital kit that I talked about before, it's got all these bags and boxes on it too. So if you get that kit, then you've got everything. And so you'll see that I've put those boxes in the bookcases, but then I've also put them in different places around the shop. Now, the other thing that's new is this pretty little table, and it also is a kit that's easy to assemble. And on the top of it, I have the big pile of the macarons and then some pastries underneath. Now, underneath is open. If you look at the picture of the kit, it's open. It doesn't have shelves. So I went ahead and cut some chipboard shelves and inserted them, glued them in place. And that way gave me a way to use that space and also, to add more goodies to the to that table. And then now you can see a better view of both the bookcases and then the pretty little table in the back. On top of the rectangular glass case, I have put the little miniature cash register. I have the chocolate invoices underneath a bag with a couple of chocolate bars sticking out of it, and I've got some tissue paper in there, and then I used ribbon as handles. Then behind that there's a little open box of chocolates, and then sitting next to it is another bag with one of the wrapped boxes of chocolate. For both inside the shop and for inside the windows, I use tea lights. And to make the shades for the tea lights, what I did was I used a stamp and I inked it up with gold ink, and this is a color box ink pad. And then I used vellum, so that would kind of hide the light of the tea light, and also make the light very soft. And then this is a way of making it more of a decorative shade. And then I kind of did this the opposite of what you would normally do. Normally, of course, you turn it over and you'd stamp it on, but I got a better result by just laying the vellum on the stamp and then using my fingers to press the vellum onto the stamp and get the ink transferred. And I just got a better, more detailed stamp by doing this. I don't know if it has to do with the vellum itself, but I just didn't get quite as good a result with just doing it the traditional way. And then just lift it off. You can see I have a really nice gold stamp on there. Now, the set of stamps that I use, there's 3 different designs, 3 different borders, and I used 2 of those borders. And what I did was I cut out the vellum, like you see here, and this is the one that I used for the inside window, inside lights, and I simply took this and glued it around the tea light like this. And I would cut some of this off, it doesn't need to be this long. And I just glued it on like this, and that gave me my shade. And then to dress up the edges, you can see here the finished shade. I've used some of the gold trim, the gold stickers that I was using to trim out some of the furniture. And then I had to come up with a mechanism so that I could remove these to make it easy to turn them on and off, and then also to be able to change the battery. And so what I did is I used 2 of these little rondelles. You've seen me use these on so many things. And I also added a metal rod in here. Now you could use a skewer, toothpick, whatever you want. It just happens to be that I have a lot of metal rods and I don't have to paint them. And then I glued it onto the top of this, and I glued it onto the part that you open up so that I can open this up without interfering with that. And of course I can also get to the switch here. I won't mess with that now, but I can also get to the switch here. So I can change the batteries or get to the switch. And then I needed to come up with a way of hanging these so that I could get them in and out. And what I ended up doing is I took a bottle cap, and it's a very shallow bottle cap. Water came off a water bottle. And then what I did is I cut a little wedge into it with some heavy scissors, like that. And what you want to do is cut it just big enough You want to cut it just big enough so that this will slide in and out. And you need to make sure that this is at the very bottom of this and it slides in and out. Because now this gets painted and then mounted to the wall. So I added glue around the edges, not anywhere else, and just glue that, not to the wall, to the ceiling. And then when it's up there, secured, then you can slide that light in and out to remove it, to turn it on, and to get to the batteries. And then you can see the picture there of what it looks like when it's all finished. Now that was for the lights in the room. Now for the lights in the windows, pretty much the same thing. The only difference was I used a different stamp. And here you can see I've got a piece of it, and I believe I got 2 shades for each stamp, border stamp. And it is this one here that I used. And then I cut out the design to make it look a little bit more interesting. And I did the same thing. The only difference is I just made a much smaller shade here, like that. And I glued it on the inside of the light. So after I glued this together, I put glue on the very edges here, and then glued that right up inside to the top of the window, or the window, yeah, the bay window. And then you've got the top of the window here, the chipboard, and then the light just goes through the hole into this. And I did not glue these in place. You could, but I didn't, and you're not going to see them, and the whole thing is removable anyway. And so I just thought, you know what, since I don't have to glue that in place, I won't, because there's always a possibility that the light just goes bad on you and it's no good anymore. Even it's not just the batteries, but the thing is just worn out. And so that way I could just replace it with a different tea light if I needed to. So that's basically the way I did the lighting. Very simple, just using tea lights. The shop windows are made out of a kit, actually 2 different kits. Very easy to assemble, and Alpha Stamps is now carrying a series of 3 different style windows that will work with this house, or you could use some of these as well with some of the room kits that I talked about in the video preceding this, the one about constructing the basic structure for the shops. And so these kits come with the front piece, the base, the top. There's grid windows for the front, for the sides, and then the back is open, so you add your own back. And so I basically use the picture above, I used the top 2. The largest one I used for the front window, and then the smallest one I used for the side window. Before you assemble the windows, if you're going to put lighting in like I did, you'll want to cut holes in the top first to accommodate the lights. And if it's the tea lights, then the hole needs to be big enough for the flame part to go through the hole, or the light part to go through the hole. And then once you've done that, then you can put the window together. Then after I did that, I painted everything. And then after I finished painting and it all dried, then I came in with the glass, the faux glass, and I used the faux plastic like you've seen me use in the windows from the previous video in building the structure. And I just added those to the side windows. Now for the front window, I'm going to do something different, because I'm going to be printing on transparency film and printing the name of the shop and an address and other information. So it looks a little cooler. Now you'll notice in the windows that the glass has printing on it, or the Chocolatier. And the way I did this was to use transparency film, and the images that fit for each of the windows that I used are in the digital image kit. So all you need to do is print them on transparency film. And a couple of things about how to do that. You want to buy the kind of film that is made for inkjet printers, because it can take the heat, so not just any transparency film. And then usually it comes with this little strip on the bottom, and the purpose of that is to give your printer something to grab to pull it through. And there are 2 sides there. If you'll feel it, this is a little bit bumpy, rough side, and then the other side is smooth. This has been treated chemically, and so this is in order for the ink from the inkjet to be held by the transparency film. Otherwise, if it printed on this side, it would just rub right off. Now, when you load it in your printer, you're going to want to put this side in first, and whatever side's the printable side, which usually most printers, well, I don't know that most printers are that way, but at least all the printers I've ever had this way, is that the sticky side would be towards me as I put it in the printer. So, but you need to make sure that you know how your printer prints, which side it's going to print on. And then just a little tip here. As you can see, this is it's rolling, and a lot of them do that. And so even though it has a strip, your printer might not pull it because it's not flat. And so, and even some printers are really sensitive, and this just seems too thin for the printer. So what I do is I mount this on another piece of paper. So I get another really thin sheet, and I just, I use these little sticky, these are used for scrapbooking, these little sticky squares. You know, you could glue this if you wanted to, as long as you were sure that the glue wasn't going to leak out on your transparency film. And then this is going to hold it in place. It's going to hold it flat. And like I said, if your printer's sensitive, it's going to give you a little bit more surface to grab. And then I just mount it on this, matching it up as best as I can and pressing it down. And now I've got a flat piece that will more easily feed through the printer. And I usually just print in the middle. You know, if you're conserving your transparency film, you know, you can arrange it, but just make sure that you're leaving some space down here and you don't end up printing on that, because that is going to be part of the 8.5 by 10.5 paper. So you want to definitely move it up this way. And then you can just print it and let it dry really good, and then pull it off. And then now you have the window. You've got the writing for the front of your windows. To jazz up the bottom of the bases of the windows, I added some paneling. And you can see from the picture, it's 2 pieces of chipboard. The measurements are written down there for you. And after cutting out the chipboard, I painted the larger piece pink and the front piece the same brown as I painted the rest of it, since that's my color scheme that I've got going. And then to further jazz it up, I added that medallion that you see, and I used this rubber mold to make that medallion. And the medallion is the one that is in the middle on the left side. And I used the whole part of the medallion. I used polymer clay and I baked it in the mold. The medallion is very detailed, so you won't be able to get it out of the mold to bake it separately. Or you could have used paper clay. If you use paper clay, again, just leave it in the mold to dry, or at least most of the drying, because like I said, it will be almost impossible to remove. And then I painted that pink and then rubbed it with some gold paint with my finger, just to pick up more of the dimension of the medallion. And then I glued that on there. And then to make things even more dressy, I ended up using some more of the gold stickers to frame out that top panel. So I thought that really brought the elegance up. And then on the side, I also have a panel, and you can see in the picture there the measurements for that panel. And that panel is going to work for both windows. So both the bigger window on the front and the smaller window on the side, they are the same depth. So you can just cut the same panels for the small window as well. And I did the same thing. I used the mold, except this time I just used the very center of that same medallion, just so I keep everything consistent. That you can see that's about all that fits there. So I just used that little centerpiece. And when I made this, I baked it in the mold, but I did a little bit more sanding and trimming once I got it out to get it exactly where I wanted it to be. And then again, the gold stickers to dress it up even more. I'm taking the same approach for the small window. You can see I've got the paneling in the front. The measurements are a little bit different because the panel's smaller, and you can see by the picture the measurements that I used. And again, I used the same medallion, this time bigger than the side, but not as big as the front. So I've just kind of, the two little swirls on the end of the medallion, I didn't use those. And so that fits nicely within there. And then I've got this consistent look. And of course, again, the gold trim to dress it up even more. In terms of displaying the items inside the window, you could use chipboard and cut some shelves and attach them everywhere the panes are to hide the glue marks and whatnot. But I decided to go with glass. And that is because with the lighting, if I had put chipboard, then the light would stop right at the first piece of chipboard towards the top. And so with the glass, then I get the light to go all the way through the inside of the window. Now I use two different types of glass display things. The first is the center part, and all I have done is taken microscope slides, and I used some 1 inch by 1 inch side microscope slides, some of those Ranger ones that I talked about earlier, the memory glass. Now, if you could not get your hands on that or didn't have that, what you could do is you could take the faux glass, that plastic, and cut out some 1 by 1s and glue multiples of them together, probably maybe 2 or 3 layers, and you would get something pretty stiff that would probably work for this. So you could do that, or you could just cut one long panel and not cut individual ones. So that's an option if you wanted to keep the sides open, but you can always just put chipboard. You'll still get that glass look all the way through the center. And then I edged that with more of that gold sticker, just kind of jazz it up and clean up those edges. So that's my centerpiece. And then for the 2 sides up top, what I've done is I've taken, again, microscope slides, and I've connected 2 of them together. So that's another way of getting a bigger glass surface if you want by just using 2 microscope slides. I used some glossy accents to merge the 2 together along the edges. And then I used 2 pieces of filigree, and I very carefully put E6000 behind that, just getting it right where the metal was, and using that to actually give it more support. Now I've glued it into the window, and I've glued it against 2 edges. I've glued it against the sides of the inside and also that front. So I've got it running right where the line is for the pane so that you don't see the glue marks. And then that's what's giving me enough support so I don't have to have an L bracket or something like that to keep it up. So that's kind of what I did for the inside. And then you can just see I've used a lot of the treats that I showed you how to make in an earlier video. And I'm also using some more of the little bags and boxes of chocolate to decorate it. And then, of course, you can see the lights, which I already talked about at the top. Now, you're going to have to make your own back. And so what I did for the back is I just cut a piece of chipboard, the size of the entire window in the back, and then I covered it with some pretty pink paper. And then to that, any place where there was kind of an opening where the treats weren't displayed, I actually added some of the posters from the chocolate shop collage sheet. For the smaller window on the side, first of all, I want you to notice how I have cut away the structure for the panes in the front. So I've opened that up to just be one big opening. And I did that just so that you could see the writing, and then just to give it the most amount of light and area for you to see all the things inside. On the bottom, I've used a piece of a doily to dress up the bottom, and I did that too on the large window. I don't know if you noticed, but I forgot to mention that. And then the stand in the center is one of those glass stands that I demonstrated in a previous video, and it's made out of glass slides and filigree. So if you want to know how to build that, you need to go back and look at that video. And then, of course, I've covered it with treats. I've got as much stuffed in there as I possibly can. And then at the top, I have glued 2 glass slides. These are the large square glass slides, the same ones that I used on the inside that I had attached to the left-hand side of the wall with L brackets. Now, I didn't use L brackets here because you would have seen them. And so I glued them to the side paneling and just a little bit to the front. And I put very lightweight things on those shelves since there isn't as much support for those glass slides as there was in the larger window, because some of that's been cut away. And then on the back, again, I took a piece of chipboard, the whole size of the back, and covered it with a pink striped paper. And then anywhere where there weren't treats, then I added in posters from the collage sheet. To make the base, I took the house or the structure and set it on top of a piece of foam core and traced around the edge of the building. And the size of the foam core limited it how long it could be. And so what I will be doing is adding another piece on the other side where they will both meet where this one ends in the front. And I do need to have a little bit different dimensions on the other side because of what I'm doing with the cafe. So after I traced it, I cut it out with a large box cutter. I painted the edges, and then I used this stone paper. And there were variations in the color of the stone. And of course, by using a 12 by 12 sheet, I needed multiple pieces. So to get rid of the lines where they meet and just to blend it a little bit better, I cut out sections of stone and layered them over the intersections of the paper, and also various other areas on the base, and then also did a lot of inking here and there, and that way I got more of a blended look. If I had just papered it and without doing that, you would have seen the lines, and because the variation in color, it wouldn't have looked right. So that just gave me a bit better, nicer blended look across the base. So like I said, when I do the cafe, I'll be adding another piece, and then I'll marry the two pieces together, and you won't be able to see where they're joined in the front. The windows are sitting on top of the base that's covered with the stone paper, and they are not attached to the wall. And the reason I didn't attach them is I need to be able to remove them from underneath, bring them out from underneath the awning to get to the switches, and also to change batteries or replace the tea light. And so the awning itself hides the tea lights. And I chose the awning that I did because I had limited room, particularly in the front, between the top of the window and tea lights and the balcony right below it. So that caused me to choose more of a flat awning. Now there are 3 different styles of awnings in the digital kit, and 2 of the styles come in 2 sizes. One is a smaller size that works with the smaller window, and the other one is a bigger one which works with either one of the larger windows. The first and simplest awning is the one that I used, and it's just a flat awning with sides. And these are the pieces. This is the smaller version, so there's 2 versions. I used the smaller one on the small window and the larger one on the large window. And then it has the sides and then the thing across the front. So all you need to do, I'm not going to attach that because it's really easy. All you need to do is score all of the pieces along the tab lines, and then glue it in place like that. Oops. Like this. And in the back, you're going to have a little bit of an overlap between the 2 pieces right here. So you're going to want to just glue that little overlap there. And you can see it here on the back of this. And then the only other thing is to go ahead and put this on the front, and then the side will get glued here, and this part will get glued here. And then you've got this in the back glued together to attach to the wall that you want to attach it to. So that's just a simple one. A more complicated one is an angled. Now this takes up a little bit more space to have this angle. So the pieces for that are here. This is the smaller version. Like I said, there's 2 versions of each one. And one thing to note is that you see that I'm using pieces that have the printed words on them. I include blank ones too in the digital kit, so that if you don't want this writing or you want something else, you can add it and you're not stuck with using this. There's another thing I'll mention too. Let's say that you don't want these pink stripes and you want something else, different paper. You could just use these as templates and just glue them to the back, and then you could just make it whatever paper you wanted. So I'm going to put this on the front, and I'm just going a little fast for the video, but you'll want to take your time and make sure everything's lining up. And all of the patterns will print on 12 by 12 paper, so you don't have to worry about not being able to, not 12 by 12 paper, 8.5 by 11 paper. So you don't have to worry about not being able to print them because you don't have the ability to print something bigger. And so these pieces, the long piece is going to go here. What's other side? Long piece is going to go here, and then you want the other tab to go to the back, because that's what's going to allow you to attach this to the wall. So I'll do that, attach that to the side. So I've got that attached. Now the next thing I do is attach one of these little pieces with the writing on it. And that's just going to go right underneath there. Right underneath the sign. And now the last thing on this side is I'm going to attach this to here, and I'm just going to put a little glue right on the edge, and then this is going to attach to that. Like that, and that gives us that angle. And then you have this tab along the top, and you have these two tabs on the side that give you the places to anchor the awning against the wall. And so you have the bigger one or the smaller one. This is the most complicated one, and it works like this. And it gives you this rounded edge. And I'll be using this in the middle of the building because the downstairs first floor is the flower shop. And this one is nice because it fits almost completely across the front of the building. So even if you didn't have anything fancy, if you just wanted like the bay windows, you just had regular windows and you wanted to put an awning over everything, then this works nicely. And but it's the most complicated. It has the most amount of pieces, and you can see how it's put together here. I'm gonna put this together for you. But the final step, I'll just do this now, is you're gonna pinch that forward, and then it will, all those tabs get glued against the wall. So in this one, you've got 3 center pieces, and one has 2 tabs on it. The other 2 just have 1 tab on it. The one that has 2 tabs on it is where you're going to put the label or the description stuff, or the piece that's got the wording or a blank if that's what you're doing. So in the DigiKit, you only have 1 image that looks like this, and so you will print 2. And the way you'll know that is in the name of the image, it will say print 2, or however many you're supposed to print, or print 3. And then knowing what goes together, now this, I'm going to take that and put to this tab, and then I'm going to take this one and put it to that tab. And the way you're going to know what fits together is by the naming. So for example, for the flat ones, one will be large flat awning, number 1, 2, 3, 4, however many pieces there are. And the other one will be small flat awning, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many pieces there are. The only exception is the last ones where, you know, you don't want to print two of these strips because there'll be a blank one and one with writing on it. You wouldn't want to print both of those. You just want to print whichever one you want. Either you want it blank or you don't. So it's going to be the same with any of these that have writing on the sides. Those pieces, there'll be a set that's without writing and one that has writing. So you just continue to do this, and this gives you that center section. And then the last tab at the top here is for attaching to the wall. So now the next step is you've got 2 of these side pieces, and you're going to come in here and you're going to glue that to actually this side, to the front here. You're going to glue that there. Now there'll be sets of awnings like this in different colors with each of the stores. So I will have a whole nother set with the cafe and the boutique, so that it all will coordinate together. Okay, so now I've got these on. Now I need to start adding these little pieces that make up this little section here. And so I've got a tab left over. So the next thing I'll do, I want the point going out. So the next thing I'll do is attach it to here. Do that. It's going to attach in 2 places. I'm going to attach it here. lining that up. And then I want to attach this tab under this to this other section. And I'm going to keep doing that until I get all of them on. And there'll be 3 on each side. So this one, this one, this one. And the final tab on that one will be the tab that goes against the wall. So like I say, you need to push it over. Don't leave it out like that. Push it over, and then now you've got all these surfaces down there, here, and here that will attach to your wall. Now there is not 2 sets of these. There's just the one size. Now, of course, you can size any of these that you want to. Only thing I'd say is just make sure that whatever you're going to size, do them all the same percent. So if you want something a little bit bigger, then make every piece, say you wanted it 10% bigger, make every piece 10% bigger, so that way everything will fit together and you won't have any problems. So that's basically how to put all these awnings together. The last thing I'm going to cover is the front door, and it's very much the same as the door inside. I used the fretwork for the door itself, and the image behind the door is different. I took a picture of the inside of the actual shop and then used that behind the door, so it looks like you're actually looking into the shop. I'm using the same stained glass piece at the top. Now the frame is different. It is the frame that comes with the kit. So since I'm closing off that front with the bay window, now I can use that on the side for a faux door. And then of course I've got hardware on the door. I've got hinges and a pull. That wraps up the Chocolatier. The next will be the Black Cat Cafe in a few weeks. If you want more information about this project, information about the collage sheets, the whole supply list, more pictures, you'll want to go over to my blog post. That's down in the description area, and all the information will be there, as well as the stained glass to download. And in the description area below, I'll also list some of the other related videos that you should watch before you watch this, building the whole structure. And then the videos that apply to all the little sweets and treats that you see that I have used in this video.